Welcome everyone to another episode of Her Perspective on DETV's Every Woman channel. I'm your host, Sharice Brewington-Carr, and in today's episode, we'll be talking about issues that are on the minds of many Delaware women during this election cycle and asking the question, what's on the ballot for women? Joining me today, we have an incredible panel of women for the first half of this episode. Please join me in welcoming Joan.
Hi, I'm Dr. Joan Coker. I am the proud immediate past president of the Wilmington chapter of the Lynx Incorporated, and I'm also an otolaryngologist, head and neck surgeon.
Thank you.
Great.
Maria.
And I am Maria Martinez, and I am an advocate for the Hispanic community in Delaware.
Wonderful. French.
And I'm Dr. Fran Franklin from Delaware State University. I'm the interim chairperson for the social work department, and I'm a mental health therapist for 30 years.
Thank you. Melanie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melanie Ross-Levin. I'm the director of the Office of Women's Advancement and Advocacy, which is a statewide office dedicated to women and girls.
Thank you, ladies, for joining me. I serve as the vice chair for the Delaware Commission for Women. And the Commission for Women, if folks don't know, is an entity that is an advocacy organization on behalf of every woman in the state of Delaware. And so we're looking to understand from Delaware women about what's on your mind, what's important, what legislation matters to you. You know, what are the issues that are pertinent to you, and how can we improve the quality of life of women here in the state of Delaware? So clearly, health as well. And so we're going to start with that topic in thinking about what are we going to talk about as it relates to health. So, Joan, what are you thinking?
What I'm thinking is what's on the minds of all women. Our reproductive rights are in a chokehold in this country. And as I talk with my colleagues around the nation, we know what to do when there's an emergency. We've been trained to do it. But when you have to think about the idea that you may serve time for doing what you were trained to do to save the life of an unborn child, that mother that's struggling, talking about the husband and what he may be going through, it's outrageous, unacceptable. And so where I am in this journey is we must collectively be the voice for women for change in this country. Unacceptable.
Our bodies, our minds, right?
Got it.
Ladies, what are you thinking?
I agree. I mean, that is really top of mind, I think, right now. I mean, we're seeing what is happening in other states. Delaware has good policies. We've codified Roe in our Constitution. But a lot of other states, we might be traveling to pregnant.
That's right.
And we could be in a state that has bad policies, and there's a whole bunch that do. And what does that mean for your health, the health of a loved one? And it's really scary. And I think the bottom line is we should trust women. We should trust doctors. And we know that when reproductive rights is not the law of the land, people with means have the option. People who don't have means do not have the option.
That's right.
And that's not fair for anyone.
Yeah. What are you thinking, Maria?
I am hearing it from the Hispanic community as well. They're afraid with this election and everything that's coming up. They're afraid of deportation. They're afraid that they cannot go to the doctor and tell them what's going on. There's a lot of women that are suffering language barriers, disparities in the health. A lot of them are starting to flee. I know of a family personally that's fleeing Florida because of it. And it's very, very, it tears the family apart. That's right. And that's the core of who we are as women, right? That's right. And when this is happening, I just feel like this is very scary for us. And it's almost new territory. Why are we going back? Why are we going back 50 years?
Yeah, correct.
We should be moving forward.
You got it.
So when I hear you talk about health, we cannot separate mental health. I hear you talking about tearing the family apart and how that impacts the woman and her feelings and what she's thinking. And I think about an ectopic pregnancy.
Correct.
And how I may die because I can't get treatment. Correct. And how that impacts my level of depression, my level of anxiety. And I also, mental health is a big thing for me, near and dear to my heart. And you mentioned the whole concept of criminalization. Excuse me. But I thought about the young lady, and I can't remember where it was. I want to say in Florida, when the police officer came in her house, and she may have had a mental health issue, but she ended up dying.
Correct.
Because he misinterpreted where she was coming from.
Right.
And as a woman, I don't want to have that fear.
Right. Yeah. So that's just amazing. You're right about that. So as we're talking about mental health and those kind of concerns and et cetera, and, when you look at what's happening in the political landscape in and of itself, it just appears to me, I don't know, it just seems like politics have gotten even meaner and less civil and et cetera. And my concern is that will people opt out of this process in terms of voting and the importance of it, just because it's just ridiculous when you hear what's happening in some instances between candidates nationally and locally. What do you guys think about the climate that we're in?
I think the young people give us hope. When you talk with them, although they may have quiet discussions on their phone among millions, they may not verbalize it to you, but you can see that there is a new energy that they have embraced, because the last thing they want is to be told what to do.
Yeah.
You're not going to tell me what to do. So my faith, my hope, my encouragement for this country is in the hands of these young people. The other thing that bothers me is this is a very personal issue. And that's what I told a gentleman when Senator Coons was kind enough to invite me to the State of the Union address. And the guy introduced the person that he had invited as the head of, women's rights and lack of women's rights down in New Orleans. And I said, tell me why you think it's your business. Tell me why on any level it should ever be your business unless it's your wife, your daughter, your children. It's not your business. And he said, we're just trying to save lives. I said, as are we.
Yeah.
I said, but look where we are, because you're asking somebody to take something very personal and talk to a board about it, talk to a group of men that may have nothing to do with anything. You have a hard time talking to your pastor about what you're going through, your husband, your mother.
Yeah.
And you want me to talk?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I just watching, and I just have to say, however, again, we've got some folks here who are representing nonpartisan organizations, et cetera, and what have you. However, I'm exceedingly proud that we have a woman a candidate for president of this United States. However you choose to vote.
Yeah.
And so one of the things, and we all know that women do it differently, okay? So one of the things that I noticed is that as we looked at the various conventions, Dem, Republican, Independent, what have you, that the humanity and the stories that women were telling about their health matters. The young girls who talked about being victimized, at an early age and suffering pregnancies and what have you, and having to consider what to do, the courage, just what you talked about, that it took for her to be able, and she's done that a few times now, and for other women who might not be able to do that. So Fran, talk about, thinking about that and how she was speaking, the impact and how people hold things and don't talk about it from an emotional perspective.
Yes. Yeah, I was thinking about the encouraging words you gave, because we do look at our youth, but the reality is we count too, even as older people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
wait a minute now, older people?
I'm sorry. I meant the younger side here, okay? All right. I have to rephrase that a little bit.
More experience.
More experience. There you go. Thank you. You're right. So fun. But when I think about mental health and holding stuff to it is important that we vote. Legislation makes a difference. We have got to vote.
Yes.
And the reason why we have to do that, they control the funding. They control the money. I think about little girls in school. We should start educating them in kindergarten, in the first grade and second grade. We don't have to wait until they're whatever in the 10th grade and they're angry or they're pregnant or whatever, anxious, depressed. We need to start earlier. But that money and the funding is controlled by our legislators. Sure. And we have to start voting down and voting up. It's not just we're voting for the president, which I think is so important, but our local legislators control funding and money too. And one of the biggest issues I see is inconsistent initiatives.
Yeah.
We start off a nice initiative.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I'm getting mental health treatment for about 6 months, maybe a year or two. And then it goes away.
Yeah.
What happens?
Yeah.
They're even left, worse off than they were before.
That's right.
And it impacts all of us. Not just, I think about the criminal justice system and the services that they are often denied. I think about what's happening in the nursing homes and people taking advantage of them. They have feelings too.
At every stage.
At every stage of life. And it's important that we vote up and vote down.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very, very important. Let me just say this, is that part of the dream and the vision for this dialogue too is that the primaries are done now. We know that, voters have made some decisions, and we're going to have individuals that are going to be petitioning and asking for our vote in general elections coming up. As you say, vote up, vote down, and et cetera. So really important, and so grateful that you all are here to talk about these issues, because I'm hoping that these individuals who are seeking our vote are actually listening, and that they will be listening to what we're saying, because that's important. Because guess what? Women are voting individuals into office or out of office. Is that right, ladies?
Correct.
So, correct.
Well, yes, definitely.
You were starting to say something, Melanie?
Yeah, I think, I have 2 daughters, and I think one of the sad things is in 4th grade, there's always a assignment to memorize the president. And you have a chart, and it becomes so vivid that, there's no woman on the chart. And it's really hard to be what you can't see.
Yes.
If you never see,
Representation
if you
matters.
never see a woman surgeon, if you never see a woman president, it's hard to even imagine becoming that at some point.
Yeah.
And so I think, although we've had, different layers of the glass ceiling have been broken, especially locally, and we've done much better here in Delaware more recently, we're still around 30% in the Delaware legislature.
Yeah.
We're not close to 50. And so we still have a ways to go. And I think, we have the general election November 5th, but it's important to vote in every election, not just the general
School
election.
board, everything.
It's actually really common. Very few people make a huge impact just because they're regular voters. And so you really want to make that the norm, that you have to vote regularly.
Yeah, and being informed, and again, as we're discussing these issues and what have you, is it on the hearts and minds of those persons who are asking for our vote? What are you thinking about that, Maria, in terms of the Hispanic community? It's been a lot. Just today, just this morning, I was listening to the news, and Anna Navarro, who I love, who was talking a lot about how she's going across the country and speaking to the Hispanic community. And it's just like any other group of individuals. She said the Latina community is not a monolith. There are different thoughts, different perspectives, and et cetera. And people are talking about the Hispanic community and not talking to this Hispanic community. So Maria,
Again,
What do you
the
think?
language barrier. We don't have enough representation. And that's the problem. There's too much fear in my community. And I'm going to address it as it is. It's my community.
That's right.
And we were never raised to go out and vote. We were never raised to get into politics. We were never raised to go out and talk to people. And that's the issue that we're having. I have people that come to me and tell me all the time, I'm not being heard. This doctor, I need a new doctor. I don't agree with the politics, but they don't do anything because they just don't have that representation for them. They don't have that person. We don't have that person to go out there and say, come on out, let's make a difference. There's too much fear. We have too many people in Delaware alone that are not even here legally. They can't even go to a doctor without fear of
losing everything.
losing everything, of their families being split apart. So this is a big issue. This is something that's bigger, I believe, than us. But I believe that we as women, and as with a woman president, I think we're going to make
A better chance, right?
beautiful change. We are mothers,
That's right.
and we know how to run our house.
That's right.
The step back. There you go.
Well, I just want to say, I'm so grateful that you agreed to be here and to share that, because it's going to take every sister, however she shows up, in the state of Delaware, to make sure that we understand those issues and that we're advocating for those issues and that we're working together, all of us together in and of itself. I wanted to go to a minute to a piece of legislation, or at least an effort in the state of Delaware. I don't know about many of you, or maybe our listening audience as well, but you hear about the lack of OBGYN doctors and the closing of offices and what have you. Delaware doesn't have a medical school. All right, doctor. Yep. Let's talk about it, because I know that there's a movement afoot and some discussions between our health providers, major institutions here in the state around that. What do you think about that?
I think it's a tragedy. I don't understand why folks can't see what's happening.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm on the board at the University of Delaware. I've had this conversation out loud. I don't mince words ever, right? So I'm telling you what's happening. Tell me why the only one that seems to see the problem, fix it, is a woman president. Can we talk about Wilma Yu? Can we talk about Dr. Harmon? You see the problem and you fix it. So I know we have a cooperative agreement with Jefferson, but those folks that go to Philly, they're not coming back to Delaware. So we've got to get started here. There's a problem. We have a shortage of anesthesiologists. We can't operate.
That's right.
Okay? I mean, you may get a whole case done and you may have a nurse anesthetist the entire time. Now, mind you, they're amazing. Let me be abundantly clear on that. But every now and then, you want that physician in the room. Hello, things go left quickly.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Right. So it's mind-boggling to me why you can see a problem but not fix it. So here's my new dialogue. My dialogue is to these young people, to women. Not only do we need to vote, but we need to run. Not only do we need to vote, we need to run.
Yes.
That's right. 80%, 20%, 70%, 60%. First of all, let's get some term limits. Senate, Congress, Lord knows the Supreme Court.
Absolutely.
That's right. Where they can see themselves. But if you got to wait till somebody's 89 and dies out of office, what you doing? You're not doing that.
Tell us exactly how you feel, doctor. I know. I hear exactly what you said, and that is so important. Which brings me to also, just for full transparency, I'm also a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated Zeta Omega chapter, the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, and the Wilmington, Delaware chapter of Links Incorporated. And these are issues that these nonpartisan organizations are constantly advocating for and thinking about. But in general, I don't know that the general public is aware that the reason we don't have a medical school is because no one's having those conversations. And so, for those people who want our vote and elected, what are you going to do about it? That's right. What are you going to do about it to move that? Melanie, I know that recently the Office of Women's Advocacy and Advancement, hot off the presses, just released a report on the state of women. There it is. And so I want you to talk a little bit about the data points. And I was reading some things that was pretty disturbing, but if you could talk a bit about what you've seen as it relates to health, what showed up.
So the shortages are clear in the report. It's pretty devastating, especially downstate. There are a lot of challenges downstate with access. I mean, we have good policies, but if people can't get appointments, that's a big problem. I have a friend who owns an urgent care downstate. It's really meant for people who are on vacation. But what she's seeing is retirees that are moving to Delaware can't get into doctors, and they're going to urgent care. And a lot of times they're going to urgent care too late. And they're using urgent care as their primary care because they can't get into primary care.
Yeah, that's right.
So the report goes through a whole bunch of different parts of health, including mental health. Delaware women have more poor mental health days than Delaware men at 4.5 days per month. And maybe some of that stress. 5.1% of Delaware women are without health insurance, and that's within women as a whole, disproportionately impacts Black women and Hispanic women. And the maternal and infant mortality rates are still very high in the state, but are worse again for Black women and Hispanic women. And so the report goes through health overall, but I think, the thing that we have to get back to is that, we can't just have good policies. We have to have that access. And if we, it's not just one thing, but that we definitely need a medical school. We need, better environment. We need better policies so that our OBGYNs aren't closing down one after the other. We need to know that, as a whole, we have to, everything, it's not just health, it's economics, it's education, and they all go together. Right. If one starts failing, then, they all fall.
They all fall. It's interesting. Two of the notes that I saw in the report is that Delaware currently has the, Health Professional Shortage Area, HPSA. And in order to get off of that rating, we need at least 76 more practitioners. 76 more practitioners. That's a lot. That's a lot. Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Let's break it down. So if you've got someone spending $85,000 a year for med school, dental school, PCOM is $86,000 a year.
PCOM for the audience.
Yes, Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine.
Yes.
Great school. Still, you're coming out with a $500,000 deficit once you live a little while you're in school. So the $10 million question is, if primary care doctors are making between 80 and 100,000, how are we supposed to crack that nut? How's that going to happen?
Well,
it's impossible. That's why everybody's going into the specialties.
Yeah.
Because they're just trying to get started earlier with my life, get out of my mama's basement. Can I just come out of that bedroom I've been in since I was 10?
Yeah.
And have a life with my husband, start a family. But you can't do it if you got that kind of debt and you're making this amount of money. Well, so primary care must be prioritized in every state.
Yeah, I guess when I saw that number, I kept thinking, and I know because I've got friends and I know and et cetera about how they incurred this debt, and it's unrealistic, is that if we have this kind of a deficit in order to make it, why are we not writing off the cost of medical school?
Hello.
Why are we not doing that?
Exactly.
Why are we not considering that because we're in that particular position? Now, let me go to our babies. We also still, even though we're doing better, we still have a high infant mortality rate in the state of Delaware. So I don't get it. Go ahead.
I can tell you why we don't get it, because there's no issue. The issue is I don't see you, I don't feel you, I don't hear you.
Yeah.
Period. Okay, so it's not a genetic difference. Allison Felix, track runner.
Yes.
1 gold medals. Why she almost died having her child? Serena Williams,
yeah.
Top athlete. We think they didn't get free medical care? Of course they did. Tell me why they almost lost their child in their life. Why? Because I don't see you, I don't feel you, I don't hear you.
Yeah.
That is the problem. It is a problem. It's a problem with the Latino community.
Yes.
If I think you're just coming in for drug-seeking behavior, you want a hot meal, or you just want a place to sleep tonight, I'm going to give you the minimum.
Yeah.
But that's not the deal.
Yeah. No.
I'm here for help, just like everybody else.
Yeah.
But you don't teach cultural sensitivity.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you have to layer, in my mind, cultural competency on everything when it comes to any demographic and sub-demographic of women in terms of how we show up.
Correct.
So, let's talk about that a bit, is that, when we talk about cultural competency, I wonder if people understand what the definition of that is. It's not just race. It's not just gender. It's class. It's a variance of things. And it's interesting at times you hear, thinking back to the whole voting thing, when you hear people talk about the Delaware way, whatever that might look like, where are women in that, in terms of that consideration in the state of Delaware? I say that these type of forums in and of themselves are there to say, no, it's about what we want as women and what we need as women. And that's what our electorate should be offering to us as well. What are you all thinking?
I think I'll get a little story time.
Okay.
So I was advocating, and this is why we need more women in office.
That's right.
So I was in Legislative Hall, and there was a bill that talked about providing tampons to women in prison. Because women in prison were making tampons out of other materials and getting infected.
Oh.
And I was the only woman at the table, and I was surrounded by a group of men who were largely supportive, but an older group of men. And the debate was, if we provide free tampons, do we still have to provide pads?
Beg your pardon?
And I had to explain sometimes, you know, you have a heavy flow and that's just the way it is, right? That's just the way it is. And everyone at the table turned bright red.
Medical issue.
And the longer I talked, the more they just said, okay, fine, Melanie, whatever you want, we'll just go with it. But the point being is that you have people in the legislature that are making decisions about women and girls. And they don't necessarily reflect the population, but they're very confident about the decisions they're making. And so you have this really kind of vicious cycle. And the other thing that happened that was a bit scary is we were working on a bill on paid parental leave. And at the time, the debate was whether teachers deserved it. Okay? Whether teachers should deserve it because
They deserve anything they need.
according to some male legislators, you can time your pregnancies like an Uber ride. Okay. And so
They should have discussed They know
Something, they cracked the code. They know something we don't know.
and the discussion was, well, I think they can have their babies in May. So that they can be home for the summer, and I know someone who did that. So I don't think they need paid parental leave. And all the women in the room said, "Oh
My God, exactly.
That's why it's important to have women at the table. And representation matters. So thank goodness you were there. But on an average day, we know that some of these decisions are being made in that way. That, in my mind, is where advocacy comes in, because we realize in the business of life that everybody can't be at a committee meeting. They can't be here. They can't be there. But we should basically say, in terms of a women's agenda for the state of Delaware, there should be a common agenda with variations of that. Yeah.
And I want to add something to that. We are all different. All of the races are different. Women, we shouldn't be a blank prescription, right? Right? What medications are good for you may not be good for me. That's right.
Yeah.
So we have to be looked at as individuals.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's not what we're getting.
Well, ladies, this in and of itself could be a whole show, but I want to thank you so much for watching thus far. We're going to take a quick break and then we're going to come back again. So thank you so much, panelists. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Looking for a reliable and efficient way to travel around Delaware? DOT has a variety of routes and schedules to meet your needs, providing service in Newcastle, Kent, and Sussex counties. Whether you are commuting to work or exploring the sights and sounds of the state, our fleet of buses are well maintained, equipped with modern amenities. Public transportation is the greener alternative. Plan your trip today. Download our transit apps or visit dartfirststate.com.
I want to go to opioid addiction and the things that we're hearing overall about how Delaware is presented. What does that mean as it relates to women and mental health and those kind of things? What are you seeing in your practice branch?
What I constantly see is women who are self-medicating. And they're self-medicating because of the stress, because of the depression. When you think about daycare for your children, marital issues, even being a caretaker, it becomes so stressful, it's so overwhelming. It's like, I can't find a doctor, so I'll self-medicate. That's what I'll do. And these are the people that I'm now seeing. The problem is, especially in the rural areas, but even in the urban areas like Wilmington, big deal, you have one facility for 30,000 people. That's not gonna work. I mean, and when I get to the rural areas, there's nothing. And I think someone mentioned it earlier, I can't remember who, but we run to the urgent care or emergency room and they become the primary care attention that we're getting, and it's not enough. And they end up staying in this vicious cycle over and over and over. And the thing that disturbs me the most is that we're not fixing it on the front end. So by the time we get to the back end, it's almost impossible to cure or find a solution that's going to be helpful to that particular person and or their family and or the community.
I get it when you talk about, all of the issues. Women are carrying the weight of the world and dealing with all those things too. But I'm going back to something you all said earlier about cultural competency as well, and how I show up at my healthcare practitioner? And do they understand perhaps maybe in my assertion for pain or whatever it is that maybe, you're giving me this prescription or what have you, or did you listen to what I was saying? And because you didn't, maybe, or you didn't understand or how I present it, am I getting the right care? Am I getting something that ultimately might take me down the road of addiction? Or what are you thinking, doctor? I see you over there. What are you thinking?
So the problem is twofold. One, there's a matter of trust. So when you try to get African Americans and people of color in a study, they don't know that they trust the process. So if you're not a part of the study, I want to give you what worked for the other 80,000.
The majority.
That don't look like us, feel like us, have systems like us. So when you use that medication and it doesn't work for me and my side effects are thus and such, but you've decided that that's not a side effect because they didn't have it. So you know what I'm saying? So it is...
You're left to your own devices?
It almost is if we need to rewrite history, to be honest with you. And there's an initiative out there to do that. You'll hear about it soon. But we really have to almost rewrite the medical books, put ourselves in it so that we're a part of it. It's a very interesting time.
And I want to piggyback on something you said. And what I wanted to share is that one of my clients said to me that when I go to see anyone from mental health services, they're using a white medical model that they're trying to superimpose on me.
Correct.
Or it could be Asian or whatever. So it really speaks to the whole cultural
From a cardiology stance, a urology stance,
That's right.
Cancerous stance.
That's right.
Because we don't trust the process to be a part of that initiative.
Yeah.
Same thing happened with COVID.
Well, we say we,
right.
And clearly persons of African-American descent and what have you, we have a history of not having good experiences with medical trials and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And it's true.
Does it help that I went to Tuskegee?
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
I did try. But in addition to that, I'm thinking about everyday woman going and presenting and saying, I'm overwhelmed, or I might be suffering from postpartum depression, or whatever it might be. And is it like, get over it? Or what exactly am I getting if that practitioner is already overtaxed and not listening, or maybe didn't have the cultural competence layer? We know we didn't get it in medical school. So what is it in and of itself that you're walking away with as the aspect of medical care? What's happening with Latina community?
One of the things, I just attended a opioid festival, I want to say. It was awareness. And one of the things that I was hearing amongst my community was the insurance issue. You cannot heal somebody with a drug addiction in 30 days.
That's right.
Why are we using that as a realistic number for treatment? Why are insurances making that decision? Man, we cannot. Exactly. There you go.
I actually attended today a victim services conference that's put on by the Delaware Criminal Justice Council. And some of the practitioners there, because they're sexual assault, abuse, a lot of different things that were going on. But we began to talk about the needs of children who required long-term mental health care and the fact that the waiting lists were so long. They're not inpatient programs and things like that in the state of Delaware. They're waiting lists for out of state even in and of itself. So, it's starting very early with these kinds of things potentially that we might even be seeing in school and things of that nature. No one's really talking about that. And it concerns me because we go to school. We're going to talk about education in depth in the next segment, but you go to school in and of itself, and how is that kid presenting, or what's happening as it relates to the whole family unit in and of itself, and who's unpacking that? Who's unpacking that as it relates to a health issue?
That whole stigma associated with mental health is a major issue.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that we really need is education and awareness early on.
Yes.
But we can't get that. I think someone asked a question earlier, why is this happening? It's happening because we got the wrong people in office.
Okay.
We need to get different people in office. We need to vote.
I hear you.
Funding them.
I hear you.
To support the people, long-term funding.
Well, ladies, we really could continue to talk about this. by itself, definitely in a different segment in and of itself, but we really have to move on. And I just want to say thank you again so much for coming out. I'm sure these conversations will continue. I actually heard from the producers there that there's about 4 or 5 segments that came out of these conversations that we're having. So thank you so much for joining us tonight.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
If you're a woman that needs help and needs some wraparound services, we at the Delaware Health Equity Coalition, Dr. Sydney Teal, Dr. Velma Scantleberry, and myself, we'd be more than happy to see you. We are located right in 19802 on Boehner Boulevard. See you soon.
Welcome back to What's on the Ballot for Women. I'm Sharice Brewington-Carr. It's my pleasure to be your host, and joining me for this segment to talk about education and economic matters is Trish.
Trisha Moses, business owner of KD Beauty Supply in Middletown, Delaware. Also own Within Your Reach Properties, LLC.
Thank you. Kimberly.
Kimberly Chambers. I am the president for the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Delaware chapter, where we advocate for Black women and girls.
Yes. Laura.
Yes, hello. I'm Dr. Laura Sanders Morris, and I am an advisor for Georgetown University Racial Justice Institute and also a proud member of Wilmington chapter of the Links.
Yes, definitely. Melanie.
Hi, I'm Melanie Ross-Levin. I'm the director of the Office of Women's Advancement and Advocacy, which is a statewide organization dedicated to women and girls.
Thank you, ladies, for joining me. And we're going to turn our attention, this segment, to our money, our purse, and also to talk about education. So let's start with some factoids that I discovered. There's 28,000 small businesses in the state of Delaware, which employs about 227,000 jobs. 42% of them are women-owned. Per the Delaware Black Chamber of Commerce, 583 of them are Black-owned. So, Trish, I want you to talk a little bit about what's it like, being in business, and what kind of challenges do you have, and what would you like to see differently going on?
So I would say that I feel like the women, even though the women sector is the fastest growing business segment as it relates to, businesses, we a lot of times struggle in the area of access and funding, more so than our, gender counterparts. We, and even more so when it comes to being a Black woman-owned business, a lot of times we're kind of left out when we're looked at in terms of the success rate. So our businesses a lot of times are self-funded. We talk about wealth building. Everyone wants a part of the American dream, but a lot of times, it seems unreachable for us, even though we have the ideas, we have the intellect, we have the grit, we have the know-how, we know how to get it done. A lot of times we don't have access. The access is limited, and then when it comes to like the resources, identifying the various resources out there that are available to us. Fortunately, I was able to tap into the Black Chamber. I am a member of the Black Chamber, and other chambers are available. But even with that, you frequently hear that, the funding piece is just not there, and we also struggle in the area of bringing on team members, so staffing shortages across industries. It's not just with one particular industry. I've seen it with both my beauty supply business as well as the property management business. When you're looking for qualified staff, people that are invested and really want to work, and have the training to be able to deliver on the needs of the employer. A lot of times the training and that a lot of that could be spoken to when we get to the education piece, but making sure that individuals are leaving school with a certain, not just technical skills, but also soft skills to be able to interact with customers and what have you. So there's just so many
barriers, obstacles, that how I meet those challenges is like, being able to, have like working as a family business with my daughter and really demonstrating to my team members that I value and appreciate them, to help with retention. And in terms of like just being connected, making sure that I expand my network in order to identify what resources are out there and available.
Okay. And I was just before you go there, Kimberly, I think one of the things that I always look at in terms of purchasing goods and services and things of that, I'm always looking first and foremost for a woman-owned business, because women, we're the ones, we do most of the purchasing. We have the purchasing power in and of itself, but looking at a woman-owned business, so I implore, everyone to do that as well, particularly because women-owned businesses often don't do well, or they don't make it in and of itself. So Kimberly, you had something to say?
I was just going to say that I'm often, probably a little bit too much, on TikTok trying to keep with my daughter and keep in the know. And there are a lot of creative business women out there, women who have a business that just don't have the necessary resources to blow up the way we know they could if they had the resources and the education. The National Coalition does have education and seminars and webinars on how to tap into some of those resources. So that's how we help us move forward.
Yeah, so advocacy is very important in terms of, do you even know? Did anybody know where Katie Beauty Supply was and what have you? Or just in general, not saying that you didn't advertise, but just in general, when we see, ask the question, is this a woman-owned business? Or, where are they, in the state of Delaware per se? So Melanie, it makes me think, again, you recently, hot off the presses, there's a report as it relates to the status of women in Delaware. What does it say as it relates to women-owned businesses and things of that nature? And then also I want to make sure that you tell folks where they can get this report.
Sure. So the report can be found at de.gov/women. And it's our new report. It goes into data not just on economics, but education, demographics, leadership, the whole gamut. And I think one of the things that the report goes into a bit is that, women, one of the reasons women are struggling and to have the capital for business is because of the cost of childcare. And childcare, according to the First State Pre-K Coalition, the estimate for childcare for one child in Delaware is $11,834 a year. And so if we know a lot of the women can't get capital and they're self-funding and they want to have a family, then, that's a big challenge. We also know that, think about the state and the state's doing business with the state. The state is one of the largest employers in the state. And we know from a recent study that the majority of contractors are not that do business with the state are not women, are not people of color. That's it. One of the reasons we have to keep track of this data is we have to be able to see what the barriers are and see what's not working.
So in my mind, that would be an advocacy metric that we need to pay attention to is that for the state or any other entity is that why aren't we hiring or why aren't we contracting with more women-owned businesses here in the state, and keep that data and keep that information going forward. It just makes me think about, what are you thinking, Laura, as you think about women-owned business in the state?
I'm thinking a few things. I'm thinking, one, I really appreciate the report that you've done.
Yes.
Because the data is so important, and quantitative is often respected more by males. However, we can't negate qualitative and storytelling and the cultural piece for us with storytelling. And so, there's a lot of focus on what isn't happening and that we haven't had access. And that is not a new conversation. What is new, though, I think we could look at it a little differently and have the conversation be more about, this is the solution. So you keep telling us we don't have access. Now we want to tell you the solutions. And so we need you to listen to entrepreneurs. We need you to listen to women who are engage also in the second shift. Women are working all day long and then come home, they take care of their families. Then the second shift happens, the side gig the side gig, which they really want to grow their own business. So the truth telling is what has to happen.
I just want to remind everyone in the audience too that part of the reason for this show in and of itself was that we are past primaries now. So we're in that season where individuals are competing, and we're going to be making a decision come November 5th for a general election in and of itself. So we're hoping that folks are leaning in and they will listen to what we're saying about these issues and why it's important to us and what we want to see happen in the future to make it better. You're right, solutions, not just talk about the issues, but also talk about solutions. And one of the things that comes to mind also, and I heard you, Melanie, talking about it too, in the last segment where we were talking about health issues, is that we've got commissions and councils and all those things throughout, and our women represented on those subcommittees or places where these decisions are being made about who gets the contract and who doesn't get the contract. And is anybody asking a question or setting aside that there should be a certain percentage for women? And if it's not, then why not? Those are things I think that we need to be paying attention to. What do you think about that?
So a lot of other states do it that way. When they're evaluating proposals and contracts, they say, and including the federal government does it that way, they give extra points for not only women-owned, minority-owned, veteran-owned, disability-owned. So that's something that we should seriously look at, because right now we don't do that, and we know that the needle isn't moving, and it might not unless we, make it more of an incentive to not only have those types of companies, but have those types of subcontractors too. So that's really common in other places, and I think if it's not working, we need to look at some other options.
I agree. I agree with that. We definitely need to look at some other options and what have you, or moreover, demand that these are the options that we want for women in the state of Delaware. So let's turn our attention a lot to education. Let's talk about education because, it makes me think that in terms of the type of vocation that a woman wants to do or what she goes in, she has to be prepared, in and of itself, educationally and et cetera. The state of Delaware is ranked number 45 in the 50 states as it relates to educational competencies. I think I'm looking at the percentage of young people who were not reading at proficiency at fourth grade. 75% of fourth graders are not reading at the proficiency level in reading. 82% of eighth graders are not at the level of proficiency in math. So these are our tomorrow entrepreneurs, our tomorrow whatever, raising families, doing, those kinds of things. But I don't get it. 45 in 50. This state has, I would say, 1,000 school districts in and of themselves, and in policies that relate to what's going on in education, and our children are failing in and of itself. And it's not related only to a specific demographic. This is the entire state who's rate at 45. So, ladies, what do you think about it? Laura, what are you thinking?
Are you serving breakfast?
Yeah, well, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Yeah, absolutely.
There's so many issues with this. I mean, and one of them that you can see during the pandemic, and everyone keeps talking about children lost a great deal during the pandemic, but it really, what the pandemic showed is that there's a problem in general. There's a problem in the classrooms in general. We're still trying to teach to students in the same way we did before there were electronic devices. Things, there's the way in which we want to approach parents. Once the numbers are low, then we blame parents. And then we also blame teachers. So there's so much blame in the conversation, and it doesn't really focus on children and the value of education.
Well, let me just muddy the water a little bit more here, and how we got to 45. It talked about our test scores, chronic absenteeism. I put down the number of districts. They didn't list that. And that it's just the 2,530 students are chronically absent in and of itself. So it makes me think, what's happening within the family unit? That's not a blame. It's just, are we cognizant of what's happening, that child is not getting to school and is absent? What's taking place there in that entire community, not only just in the home? But these are things that are issues as to how we got to, and it's not just COVID. It's just not the pandemic. We've been working on this for a while. And I know we're going to get some great questions from the audience as well. And I know that there's some efforts and things moving forward as it relates to this, but 45 out of 50, Delaware is too small for us not to be doing better on behalf of children and with children here in the state. What are you thinking, Kimberly?
I'm thinking back some time ago. I'm doing my story now.
That's all right.
When I used to be a business administrator for a small charter school, 99% African American. We had various situations. We had situations where the child sometimes stays at mama's house, and then they didn't bring their homework to school because their homework was at mom's house, and it caused a bunch of problems. We had some teachers that didn't spend time with the child, and we had certainly parents that came to school ranting and raving about something that the teacher may have said to the child. Not saying that they shot or share not, but we saw multitude of things like that. So when I stopped working there, I started tutoring kids. And so I would go to a person, a ninth grader who needed help with algebra that couldn't do multiplication. Multiplication was learned back in elementary.
Third grade.
Yeah. So this child was moved along, not
Socially promoted.
not grasping the concepts.
Wow. Ladies, what are you thinking?
I mean, it's not the whole solution, but I think it's part of the solution. The truth is we have teachers in Delaware who will go to Pennsylvania to teach because they know they can make more money in Pennsylvania. So, and New Jersey right now is debating, in New Jersey, if you're a public school teacher in New Jersey, you have to live in New Jersey, but they're debating to change that. And what do you think will happen if they change that residency requirement and Delaware teachers can make a lot more money driving to New Jersey? And I've never taught, but I have substituted once or twice. And let me tell you, I mean, you could pay me $1 million. That is the hardest thing.
Yes.
I mean, whatever it is, it's not enough.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I came home once, I was like, this.
Yeah.
And I couldn't, and I was talking to a friend who had taught kindergarten for 30 years. She goes, "What happened to you?" And I was like, "Oh my God."
Well, we learned a lot during the pandemic when the kids had to be at home, right? And it's just like, God bless the teachers, and when they go back, just in general, to be able to manage that child. When I say manage the child, I'm talking about from beginning to the end of the day and all of the needs that they have because they're parenting also.
And I think we have to be realistic a bit, right? So right now we can have up to 25 plus kids in a class.
Just unreal.
And we're pretending like the teacher can differentiate for all these kids and have all this different issues going on. And I think of course it doesn't work, right? We need to think of, really think out of the box. But what I get back to time and time again, because we know master teachers, which are really teachers in the classroom 10 years, most Delaware teachers are not in the classroom 10 years because they leave the profession before that.
Yeah.
And they leave for lots of reasons. But one of the things that drives me a little batty as a women's rights activist is a lot of jobs that are women dominant. It's, you're not doing it for the money. We can pay our bills with kudos. You can't pay your bills with kudos. Women should be able
and teachers are buying supplies and things of that nature.
Women should be able to be in careers and pay their bills and not have 3 jobs and stay in a career and grow in a career. But right now it doesn't add up. And a lot of Delaware teachers are quitting within the first 5 years. So they're never getting to that master teacher level. And that's why we really need to think differently about the occupation and really invest in the people who are doing the job. Because we know no matter what's happening at the school, if you have an awesome teacher, your kid is good.
Yes, go right ahead. And then what are you, Laura?
If I could just add to that, because in addition to the teachers, it does take a village.
Yeah.
A lot of times our children are starting out in nurseries, daycare programs, Head Start, pre-K.
Pre-K.
And a lot of times you think about the teachers or the child care providers from those programs are often they don't have any protections. Like teachers have the union, and these child care workers, they don't have any, they don't have any real advocacy group working on behalf of them to make sure that they're getting the required training, making sure that they, there are, certain hours of the day that they're entitled to certain number of breaks. So I'm thinking about that, but I'm also thinking about it takes a village in terms of the support for families.
Right.
We often, when you think about the schools, oh my goodness, the schools, there's a specific need there, but you talked about the trauma for these families. One of the things that I remember coming out during COVID was how much of an increase the abuse claims that were coming into the state had gone up because children were at home.
Right.
Yep.
And so, who's going in and providing that level of support for those families, for that mom, that single parent, that single dad that is, not trying to do it all.
Right.
Trying to do it all and really don't have the support or the resources to be able to, because I think it really starts there. And then I want to add one more thing, just on my mind. Okay. There are number of organizations that are funded. I think that there needs to be more accountability. What are those dollars? Are you fulfilling your commitment, what you said that you're going to do? And that that would be a legislation piece, but if we're giving you money and you're saying that you are going to provide this level of support for 500 families, then we want to see it because those are taxpayers' dollars.
We've got to wrap up on this one. The time went by really quickly, but I keep thinking as expensive as it is for childcare, and then you hear and we know that the childcare provider, childcare worker, who has one of the most important jobs there is being paid less than livable wage is unacceptable. So where is the money going? And so that's something to think about, is that we really need to think about that again with our elected officials and et cetera, to look at what's happening as it relates to that structure that you're paying out thousands of dollars, $11,000, I think you said, a year for child care. And then ultimately that worker who's taking care of your child, the most important thing ever, is making nothing and trying to figure out how to work that out. I've been given the cue, so we have to go to break, and this conversation will continue. When we come back from break, we're going to also have our former panelists join us, and then we want to hear from the audience. Thank you.
Government doesn't make a move without an agenda, some type of plan. The problem is we haven't been on the agenda. Sometimes we're overlooked. Sometimes our interests aren't the interest of those in power. I'm your host, Kerwin Gaines, on DETV's new show, The Agenda. We're going to do our best to ensure that you, Delawareans, are knowledgeable about what's going on in the Assembly, federal government, local government, it doesn't matter. We're going to do our best to ensure that folks that make the agenda on a daily basis have to answer for it. Let them explain what they're doing. If it affects you, it's on the agenda.
Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. We just want to thank everybody for being here, but now we want to hear from the audience. We want to get your great questions. So anything, education, our purses, our money, and health. So yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes.
Ladies, your phenomenality to say that. So I'm going to turn our attention to the bills. So I'm Chaplain Major Shelby Aston, proud to say first woman chaplain in the history of Delaware.
Hi.
California 2019 came back in 20, and there's just a disparity. We talk about women, we talk about veteran women who got all kinds of things that come on top of that. One of the things we don't talk about a lot is, and in Project 2025, we'll go back to the ASVAB being something that's mandatory. Also, what they're trying to do is go back to the draft, which would include women. So what I want you to speak to is, How would that be a game changer for women if women are also included in this draft?
You know, it's interesting that thank you so much for your questions, and thank you for your service. We really appreciate that. It's very interesting when we think about women, again, because we're showing up everywhere. Women have been in service in the military since the beginning of time. And so when you talk about the draft and reinstituting the draft and considering women in all the hats that we wear, what's going to happen to the family? What will happen to community as a whole? And that's the first thing that comes to my mind. If you do that, if you remove the woman from the community, what will take place? Ladies, what do you think about that?
I have a huge problem with that.
Military mom,
Military wife, military daughter-in-law. I mean, our family has always been committed to service, right? And I have 2 sons in the Army, husband, former Air Force, father-in-law from former Army, and my mother-in-law, retired Navy chief. And, you know, the conversations around the table are interesting during the holidays. But one of the things that they talked about the most is, you know, when they decided to, you know, enlist into the military, it was their choice. Okay. It was their choice. My daughter, however, is choosing a different path, you know, and she has that right to be able to do that. And, you know, taking that away, it goes back to what Dr. Coker said earlier. A lot of times we're not seen, you know, and that is a problem. That is what's on the ballot this election season. You know, making sure our voices are heard and making sure that we're seen, because those things matter. I want young people out there that are listening to understand, to go back and read that page. And
Project 25, yeah.
Project 25, and think about how that is going to impact them. Because I thought about it when I saw that, and I think about all the different personalities within my family, my sons versus my daughters, and, you know, which career path they will decide on, and I want them to have that choice.
You know, it's interesting that the thing that came to mind also, and I just want to reference, Project 2025 is a document, just in case for our listeners, it's a document that was developed by the Heritage Foundation and has been linked to one of the presidential candidates that is attempted to separate themselves from it, but it looks as if it has a particular agenda. Read it, Project 2025, you can find that. I think it's project2025.org. And to look specifically at not only just the military, education, our economics. They want to do away with the Department of Education. It's just ridiculous, some of the things that are in there that literally are a mantra for what a particular administration may look like. And again, our purpose here is to make sure that we're informing folks about voting and who you should be voting for and thinking about that is not expounding that issue. Anybody else as it relates to military, any other thoughts?
The thought that comes to my mind, though, is the humanity piece and not seeing us, women in particular, as humans. It's okay to tell us what to do with our bodies, but now we should go ahead and fight for our country.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely.
It's disgusting.
Absolutely. Good point.
Yeah, it is. How about that? Jones, you have a thought?
You know,
You let it go? Yes, sir? Go ahead, let's go.
I second that emotion. we all do.
Yeah.
As you said, if you have the choice, that's great.
That's different.
You to tell us we can't do this,
Mandate.
we must do that. Are you kidding me?
It's control. It's control. And this election cycle is about our choice, our vote, our way.
Yes.
Agreed?
Yes.
All right. Okay, very good. Very good. Next questions? Is there another question? We have a question out there about education. Come on, Miss Mimi. I know you want to tell us about that number 45 ranking. I know you do. We've got an advocate and a civil rights icon amongst us in our audience that knows all about it. Yes, ma'am.
Now, I don't have a question, but I just want to say, I just need to say, we talk a lot about education. We talk a lot about the profession of teaching and that kind of thing. And we claim that we really take a great pride in education, that we treasure it. We don't. and we need to stop lying about it because we allow anybody to teach. And whether they can understand how children learn doesn't matter as long as they're there. So I really think that, and I've been dealing with this for a long time, but I really think that this time, because I'm getting old and I need to put the legislation through, I really do believe that this year I'm going to try and get legislation through that teachers are educational engineers. They should be trained as such, taught as such, and our children will reap the benefits. I'm dead serious.
Thank you so much. It's interesting. Thank you, Ms. Mimi. We were just talking, and just so you all know that the mother and the daughter over here. So if you saw in terms of the interaction and the passion, that's where it came from. But we were talking on the couch just before about the value, just the thing you were talking about, or the devaluation of education. So Laura, speak to that.
Yeah, I just think it comes down to the value. Because if we do not value education, you can't say you value education and you don't put money in the school system. You can't say you value education and then when your children are educated, you don't want to vote on a referendum for teachers to get an increase in salary. You can't say you care about education and you don't value parents and you don't value mothers. Because we are the ones who make the difference in the household, and we birth children. So we need a campaign really around the value of education, because the Department of Education, for any candidate to want to remove that in the United States, we don't have to name who, I just know I'm with her, because the Department of Education cannot be eliminated from America.
So with that, Maria, what are you thinking about that when we talk about the value of education and the need for cultural competency and making sure that all children, Hispanic children included, are educated? What do we need to make that happen?
Representation. We need more of us to go out there, spread the word, and really hit the ground with it. I mean, we're in a warfare. That's how I see it. Why are we fighting? This is important. Our future is our children. Not the 89-year-old that's sitting, collecting a check, sleeping on national television.
Correct. Oh my goodness.
That bothers my soul.
That sounds like a cliche that we need representation, but it's so true. If you think about it,
it's very true.
It's so very true. Because you, as someone said earlier, that if you see it, then you think kids can achieve it. So representation is so important.
I have to say, as it relates to economics, is there another question back there? Okay, yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'm reading regarding the reproductive rights of the representative rights in the religious church and liberty.
My question is, I hear a lot of Christians that I interact with saying they're not voting because of our Democratic candidate is, that they see it as the reproductive rights being a pro-abortion issue. But what do you say to make them understand that it's not just about it's not pro-abortion, it's about the reproductive life and health about our bodies?
Well, I think you're answering that, and certainly in that when you talk about reproductive rights and a women's health care in and of itself, abortion is just one aspect of it. And there's so many other aspects that are related to that. And I think that's where education and awareness comes in that conversation. At no point in time, folks are telling people, and the candidates that I plan to support is not saying that we want you to turn your back on your belief. Matter of fact, she has said that. Don't want you to turn your back on your belief. But when you look at the conversation and what we've heard about, at least in 2 cases, women dying in Georgia, it had to do with, in one instance, with the child very much desired and et cetera, and things happen during pregnancy and what have you that are life-threatening kinds of things. And she was refused health care to the extent that she lost her life. That's unacceptable. And when you think about it, and it's disproportionate in terms of it being unacceptable because many people look in various ways, if you will. So I think it means that we really have to, when we hear our pastors, our rabbis, and others with that incorrect assumption or et cetera, that it's our responsibility to educate. And if we don't know or are not able to, then we can certainly turn to the Dr. Joan Cokers and other medical professionals and what have you that can help and come to our faith houses to help us make good decisions.
I think that needs to be a rule
Between now and November.
Sooner than later, right?
That is going to help a lot of people make up their mind. I've heard that opposition towards the reproductive rights restoration. I've heard the opposition from men and women. And in my, I'm really big on media and campaign and exposure. I wish we would, between now and November, read a page out of Project 25 every day so that we could see the horrors of it.
Yes, ma'am.
Between now and November. Thank you. And it's such a great time tonight.
Thank you. I want to ask one thing that I saw and we'll wrap up. One thing that I saw in the report that you had, Melanie, is that women are still not paid at the same rate that inequitably as anybody, and particularly. And then you start to look at it's white women, it's black women, it's Latina women, and et cetera. Start there, and then it starts to get worse for every segment of our population, this demographic we're talking about in terms of women. There was not a category in all the categories that we looked at in vocation. It didn't matter what your educational level was. It didn't matter what the vocation was. Nobody was making what a white male was making. And so what do you say to that?
So in Delaware, white women make 81 cents to a white male. Black women make 61 cents compared to a white male, and Hispanic women make 53 cents. And the wage gap just persists. I think what's tricky about the wage gap is that despite the fact that more women are going to college, like if you look at Delaware State University, you look at Wilmington University, you look at University of Delaware, more women are going to college than men, and more women are graduating than men, and more women are getting master's degrees. So it's not the lack of education, but that wage gap, it just persists and persists and persists. And, you know, there's lots of reasons for that, but it doesn't help Delaware as a whole because there's always a calculation, right? Is it worth it for me to work? If I have little kids and I'm paying for childcare and it's almost $12,000 a year, is it worth it for me to work? And Delaware actually has a smaller percentage of working women that are, they have a larger percentage of working women that are opting out of the workforce compared to Maryland and New Jersey. And part of that is that life calculation. Can I afford to go to work? And we know that the repercussions for women, especially towards retirement, are huge. If you opt out of the workforce, even for a fairly small amount of time, it really impacts your economic security overall.
Staying in poverty, you know, in and of itself. So even more important, I think, for, again, taking us back to why we started this, is the importance of voting. I think that you, coming now is October the 12th. By October the 12th, you must be registered to be able to vote here in the state of Delaware. If you are 18 before, Joe, help me. Yes, 18 before November 5th. By November 5th, you can register by October 12th in order to vote, and we must vote. You've heard some of the issues. There are even more issues and what have you that are relevant to women and the people we love and our families. We must vote. And beyond voting, also make sure that who's elected is kept accountable to what they've committed to do. I think is very, very important. I just want to say thank you to the ladies. But just before we end, there's something that I read. Audre Lorde is one of my favorite poets. And it's about issues. And so again, women, we're not a monolith in and of itself, but she says there is no such thing as a single issue. Struggle, we do not live single-issued lives. Our struggles are particular, but we are not alone. So, and I'm so glad that you all were able to join us tonight, and all of you, and we're gonna keep going, all right? Thank you, ladies. Yes.
Yeah.
Voted.